Welcome to another amphibious ATV related video. This video is going to show two slightly different beavers made by Wheeler Mobile of Keswick, Ontario. The beaver on the left was sold as a demonstrator in 1967, and the beaver on the right I believe to be one that was used by the Wheeler Mobile factory beaver racing team. Let's have a look at these two beavers up close. You may or may not know that the beaver was designed to use the leftover parts from the Pangor Penguin amphibious ATV purchased at the bankruptcy sale in Carlton Place in 1965 or so. So many of the parts used on these machines will be familiar to those who are familiar with the Pangor Penguin. This beaver, of course intended for public use, has headlights mounted on the deck. The front of the beaver is slightly different than the Penguin. It has this slightly raised area under the handle and out towards and behind the lights. The handle is the same as what was used on the Penguins, possibly the windshield as well. The steering yoke, you can kind of see through the windshield, is the same, at least what's there is the same as what we used on the Penguin. The steering is of course different because the wheels on the front of the beaver are put together on a single support in a tricycle configuration. This is the racing beaver. Noticeably different are the absence of the deck handle and the molded in areas where these headlights are mounted. Now these headlights have been recently added. I don't think they were originally on this machine, but the molded areas where the headlights are is clearly original. I am pretty sure this windshield was recently installed and was not originally on the beaver. And if we look at the front suspension, or the steering here, I guess, the front wheel and supports, this is quite different than the demonstrator beaver. First of all, the wheels are angled so that they're closer together at the bottom than the top. The main support is angled forwards. There is a bar that goes from the front backwards to a shock absorber. So this beaver appears to have front suspension. While we're here, take note of the 3 holes still visible in the front of this machine. We'll get back to that when we look at some old photos later. The tires on the rear of the beaver are slightly different than the Penguin tires. These are 16 by 14.5 by 6. And this beaver, the demonstrator beaver, the rim on it has a number visible here. And the tread design is, of course, the Terra grip design, but the tread ends fairly high out, or far out on the sidewall. It only wraps around slightly onto the sidewall here. And on the racing beaver, the tread design seems to continue further down the sidewall. This also has some snazzy little diamonds all the way around the sidewall, and this rim, I don't see the number cast on it. This is the same size as the demonstrator beaver. It is the 16 by 14.5 by 6. Taking a look at the cockpit of the demonstrator beaver, I'd like to point out a few things. First of all, this has seat cushions installed, held in place with dome snaps. And a small detail here, The seat molding is in front of the top molding, and the exposed edge of the seat molding is covered with a piece of trim material. Between the seats we see the gear shift coming up through an oval hole, and the hole is covered by a shift boot. We see the center console, which actually houses the battery. It continues forward and stops where it meets the wheelhouse, the housing for the front wheels. The seat molding, gear shift, boot and hole, and the battery box lid and console, I believe, were slightly changed in later Beavers. I believe this is an early production Beaver. We'll see some differences in the racing Beaver, but to continue here, this machine has a few customer added accessories: the battery box, flashlight, pencil box radio. That is a little Tenam radio with a storage place for pencils. This is a dash fence intended for older cars, which had a steel top dash. You could stick it on and you could throw stuff up in behind it on the dash, and it kept stuff from falling off the dash. There are a couple of door edge protector bumpers with reflectors on them and a change holder. All accessories from the local hardware store, I'm sure. This Beaver has warning lights and controls and the passenger assist handle on the dash. Now, the previous owner has labeled everything here except the passenger handle. And if we look a little closer at the steering yoke, those familiar with the yoke on the Penguin will notice that this has no bottom piece to it. And the lever, the throttle lever, sorry, is actually installed backwards to the one on the Penguin. In the racing Beaver, the steering yoke looks the same. The throttle lever is turned around with the curved face forward again. Not the way they are installed in the Penguin, but it still works. And if we look at the dash on this machine is molded for the passenger assist handle, and we can see a raised area there for, I'm not sure, because the demonstrator Beaver doesn't have that raised area, but this Beaver has those raised areas in the dash, and it has no instruments or passenger handle. The instruments are located in the console on this small panel. The instrument lights, the ignition switch, and two switches. Now, there was one switch in this machine previously. I'm not sure if that was original. It may have been installed to control the headlights. It wasn't actually in use, but now these two switches are for reversing solenoid and headlights, as this is not an original ignition switch. You may see here that the console goes up over the doghouse, the wheelhouse, pardon me, and the battery lid is held with a screw. The gear shift lever comes up through a rectangular hole in the seats. There is no shift boot. The seats in this machine have no dome snaps for seat cushions. I'm not sure if they're original, but the seats are drilled with drainage holes. The top molding goes over and in front of the seat molding, and that the shift lever hole and the console were actually a change from the earlier production Beavers. This is something that you will see on later production Beavers. I'm not sure when that change was made. Checking out the rear of the demonstrator Beaver, there are a few things to note. First we see the Beaver name prominently molded into the engine cover. The engine cover being held in place by a wing nut at the front. We see the exhaust outlet to the right, which looks to me to be the same one used on the later model Penguins. We see a fuel filler on the left. We see a tail light, possibly factory installed. We see some reflectors, possibly previous owner installed, maybe factory, I don't know. We see a chrome trailer hitch. And just to the side of the trailer hitch, we see mounting tabs for a different trailer hitch perhaps, I'm not sure. And if we look at the shape of the rear of this Beaver, you'll note the area behind the tire comes across, step down, and then the V shape here comes up. And this is actually the molded in rear handle in this area. That's why the Beavers do not have the chrome accessory handles added. They have handles molded in. These are actually a little more awkward to use in my opinion, but that's the way they made them. Over here on the racing Beaver, we see the shape behind the rear wheel here slightly different, with the V area coming up to the molded in handle. We see a painted trailer hitch with no extra tabs mounted off to each side of the trailer hitch. And we see a couple of bolts going through the area back here. We'll see what they're for in a moment. We see the exhaust exiting under the engine cover on the left hand side. We see the engine cover with no Beaver name embossed on it, or molded on it, sorry. We see a fuel filter to the right. We see a hole cut in the engine cover, not exactly sure why. And this engine cover is held in place by a rubber toggle, which is attached to a stud inside the engine compartment. And there are two hooks that hold the front of the engine cover in place. Looking at and in the engine compartment for the racing Beaver, we first see, at least I see, that the area around the engine cover, the engine opening, sorry, is clearly molded to accept the engine cover. So it's clear to me that the top of this Beaver was molded with this opening this size. It wasn't simply a standard production Beaver that somebody took a jigsaw to and made the engine compartment opening larger. We can clearly see the exhaust system exiting on the left, unlike the production Beaver and the Penguin, where the exhaust system is on the right. We can see on the right there is a steel fuel tank supported on wooden blocks. Now I'm not sure, actually I'm pretty sure this is not the original fuel tank for this machine, but the original tank I'm sure was mounted on this side. Now we have of interest here is a duct coming off the engine cooling shroud. And the end of the duct is pointed down under the seats. I'm not sure why that is. And that, I believe, is a factory detail, because I do have a cooling shroud that was discovered at the old Beaver factory that was modified in this way with the outlet for the duct. If we look down and to the right, we see the end of the bolts that we saw on the outside of the machine. These are holding a bracket, which is holding what appears to be an adjustable chain tensioner. We see a single row chain, and we see, if we look further in, we'll go dive in further with the camera here, we see sorry about the angle, we see two sprockets, one slightly larger than the other, and if you look to the right of the sprockets, there is what appears to be a flanged bearing. You may also note there are no support rods going from left to right inside this machine. And if we look at the carburetor, this is a Kian carburetor that I believe is recently added. It looks like a new carburetor. I didn't look into all of the details of this intake manifold, but I assume it to be the original intake manifold with a section of pipe added, and then some hoses and gear clamps used to install the new carburetor. This engine does run, and it seems to run reasonably well with this carburetor. I haven't timed it in the quarter mile or put it on a racetrack or anything, but it seems to run all right with it. You may note the spark plug wire has the incorrect boot on it, because this machine also has an incorrect ignition coil. You can see in there, the red coil. It's a car type coil, not the original Seba coil, with a ballast resistor and car condenser. I'm sure this was only added to repair possibly a damaged coil or a suspect coil. When it was discovered the Seba coil was probably difficult to obtain, this car coil was added with the ballast resistor and condenser. The control box is here, looking mostly original, except it does not have the cover on it. Unfortunately, there's some wiring in here that runs through the control box in a non-original way that I think is going to prevent the lid from being installed. Almost forgot. If we go back to the right side, and if you can see, it looks like there was an access hole in the inner fender. We can just barely see on the left the cover on the side cover where the ignition points are. So there may have been an access hole to allow the points to be adjusted simply by removing the right rear wheel. Looking at the underside of the engine cover on the demonstrator Beaver, we can see the pins that locate the rear of the cover and the notch at the front where the stud and wing nut go. And if we turn the cover around, we can see the operating instructions fiberglassed into the engine cover. This is a feature that was also seen on the Penguin. You can clearly see product of Wheeler Mobile RR1 Keswick on the instructions here. Looking at and in the engine compartment of the demonstrator Beaver, we may first notice that the molding around the engine compartment opening is slightly different. This is smaller, the opening is smaller, and the molding is slightly recessed across the bottom as well as the other three sides. There are holes here for the two pins on the engine cover, and there is the wing nut and stud. And if we look in the engine compartment, we can see the muffler here on the right side. And again, the exhaust outlet on the right, I believe, is the same as was used on the later model Penguin. If we look down in the darkness here, we see a double row of chain. Just to the right of the chain, oh here I'll make it the right, there, to the right of the chain, hidden in the black gunk in there. is an axle seal housing, and the rod we see crossing the center of the picture is one of the bearing housing supports, which were not on the other Beaver, the racing Beaver. And again, the axle seal seen here is not on the other Beaver. The chain adjuster seen well above the chain in the picture now is different than the racing Beaver. And of course the double row chain is different than the racing Beaver. The jack shaft is the same. The engine is the same. They're both 9Es whose serial numbers start with 750E. This one still has the original Villiers carburetor on it and air filter. The original spark plug boot is still on the original spark plug wire. We just had what I believe is a bicycle cable dress-up item added to it. The black box in this machine is now the red box, and the fuel tank is on the left side of the machine. I think that pretty much covers all of the differences I can see anyway between these two machines. So now we'll have a look at the material which leads me to believe, to strongly believe, that the machine seen to the rear here, this one here, information that leads me to believe that this was a Wheeler Mobile racing Beaver used by the factory race team in and around 1970. Before we take a look at the photographs I promised you, I will show a few details of this Beaver, the one I believe to be the racer. First of all, we'll look at the underside of the front deck, where it is clearly molded, not cut and patched, where the raised headlight mounting areas are. We move slightly to the right. You can see a spot here where it looks like a hole has been filled. This is on the side of the dash, right about here, where my finger is. We're now looking at the front of the Beaver, and it looks like in this area there has been a repair made. I'll just step back so we can see where that area is. So that area is about there. Now we're going to look at some Beaver pictures. These pictures were sent to me years ago. This picture is one of several pictures, 3 or 4 I believe, that I received in July of 2015. And I believe these were sent to me by the nephew of the guy who designed and built the Beaver. And the Beaver in the next few photos has a few interesting details on it. This one shows a patch in the front left corner. It has a sloped front wheel support. Looks like it has a bar going backwards from that to what may be a shock hidden here in the shadows, a shock absorber. It has the molded areas which look like they are for headlight mounting. It doesn't have headlights mounted on it at this point. There's a roll bar installed with a bolt going through the side of the body just ahead of the dash panel, and it looks like 4 bolts on each side behind the seats. And I can also see in this picture what looks like some dome snaps. So the machine we saw in the video may have had dome snaps previously. Of course, they could have been filled in the way these holes were filled in and these holes were filled in. I'll take a look at it again here before we go to the next photo. Actually, we're looking back at the racing Beaver. And I can see an area there, and there, and there, and maybe another couple areas over there that appear to have been repaired, filled as it were. So this is looking like the one in the pictures. Back to the pictures, we'll go to a different view. This of the right side. In this picture we can see, I'll get my pointer, we can see the exhaust on the left hand side of the fairly large engine compartment opening. We can see a slightly different fuel filler on the right hand side of the body at the rear here. We can see what looks like 4 bolts through the body to attach the roll bar. We can see the roll bar attachment point here. We can see the dash where it looks like there is no passenger assist handle or any instruments. We can see, if we look close, the instrument panel. However, it looks like the instrument panel in this picture, the indicator lights are on the left, the ignition switch is center, and there's a toggle switch on the right. Quite likely the toggle switch was used at this point to power these fog lights. Now that panel does look the same as the one in the machine that I've been taking a video of, except this is downside up. It's, if you rotate it 180 degrees, it would put the indicator lights to the right and the toggle switch to the left. There's the dash, and there's the back view of the headlight mounting areas. And then we look at the next photo. Again, these from 2015. This one just a side view. Again, the patched area which appears to match the machine sitting in the yard here. Now, I received pictures of this machine since I received these pictures. I received one picture actually in 2022. The machine appears to have sat for a while, possibly outside. Again, there's the patch. Looks like the same patch there and there. This photo was sent to me by a different person than the previous 3. The same sloped front wheel support, the bar, shock absorber, of course headlight mounting areas, roll bar, etc. The details seem to agree between the previous 3 and this. The fog lights again on the roll bar. So now we'll go to some older photos. We'll go back in time. This is one of a series of photos shared on the Penguin group on Facebook by Mike, forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Wiedemann, whose father worked for Wheeler Mobile and may actually be the gentleman seen here driving a racing beaver. Now this racing beaver, although it's not the one that's here in the yard because this has pedestal mounted headlights, the same headlights that are on the demonstrator beaver and most penguins, but this photo shows a flap in front of the front wheels, and I think I may have forgotten to mention it, but if we go back to these pictures, which is forward in time, we see screws in the front of the body above the wheel opening. So that matches to the machine here in the yard. And it looks like those holes were for a flap. So again, pictures of racing beavers, this time in the pits. If we start over here on the left, I think this is a Sperry Ran Tricart, which used the same Terra tires as the Beaver and Penguin. On the Beaver here, looks like we have a painted trailer hitch, the exhaust on the left, fuel filler on the right. No roll bar on that machine. I'm going to move on to another photo. This machine here, these machines are quite likely the same machines in the other pictures, but just a different angle. So this one again, exhaust on the left, fuel filler on the right. Looks like possibly tail lights here. Looks like instruments down here. Nothing on the dash. Molded headlights, or headlight and manning areas. No roll bar, but no, this could be the machine that's in the yard here. Then the last photo I have with some people in it, some of the race team in their red jackets with the racing stripes on it. Quite a few trophies in the picture here. So this one I think is the closest to the machine here in the yard with the fuel filler on the right, large engine compartment opening. I didn't check to see if there was any sign on the back of taillights being mounted. So thanks again to Mike Wiedemann for these photos. Always cool to see old photos of these machines. Gives us a look back at some of the history of them. And I guess that about wraps up this video. Oh, no, it doesn't. Got one more thing to do. We just want to look, see if there's any indication of lights mounted on this Beaver here. So looking at the area just to the left of the engine compartment opening, this may have been repaired. And if we go to the right side of the engine compartment opening, again, this may have been repaired. So this may be the Beaver we saw in those pictures with the taillights on it. Cool. So that wraps up this video. There again is the engine. So thanks for watching. If you have any old pictures to share, any new pictures to share, any questions, feel free to make a comment below. Drop over to the Facebook group, Penguin Amphibious ATVs, and check out the pictures and videos there too. Again, thanks for watching.